Hi, this is Celeste with the Celestial Report, and today we're going to do the Woo Woo Show with Chad Riley, who is a film producer. Do you write books also, Chad,
I have
or do you
not written
just?
anything yet, but I've got enough material. I could probably write a couple of books right now.
So he just completed and has a film out that you can find on VMO, which is super interesting, and it's Skinwalker and Stranger Things. And so this is Chad Riley sitting next to me, and we're going to have a conversation about the supernatural, the paranormal, what got him started down this track, and lots of good things. So, welcome to the show. Welcome to Celestial Report, Chad.
Hi, Celeste. It's good to see you again. I know the last time we saw one another was at the True Legends conference when you came up and gave you a copy of the Hollow Earth Chronicles as well as Higher Entities. But yeah, this new film of mine, Skinwalkers and Stranger Things of the Unseen Realm. This is my first solo project, so it took me about a year and a half, 480 pages of notes condensed down into an 88-page script, and it's 2 hours and 34 minutes long. So I'm hoping that it's going to bless a lot of people's lives.
I think it will. I mean, it was such an excellent documentary. And how did you choose the name of the title?
Well, I wanted it to have some reference to some of the material that will be covered in the book, but I also did want to hit on specific keywords that I know are pretty hot topics. And being that the main bulk of the research had to do with Skinwalker Ranch, was what I started out initially researching to put together a documentary. It quickly led into all sorts of different things, and it tied in with a lot of Mike Heiser's research about the unseen realm, and even got into a TV show that a lot of people are very excited about called Stranger Things, which originally was called Montauk by the Duffer Brothers.
So I've got some interesting inside information that you might be interested that you can feel free to pass along as you talk with different folks in different interviews. So I was in a military conference um, in 2018 for the unveiling of the transhumanism agenda in the different branches of the military. And from the podium, they said if they were speaking directly to the commanders, and they said, if you want to prepare your troops for what they are going to see and experience in the days to come, have them watch Stranger Things. Well, I had never watched Stranger Things or really even heard of it because I'm too busy doing real life research. But that caught my ear, and I go, if the commanders are telling the troops that this is what they're going to see and experience, I better check it out. So I did check it out, and what I found is yes, that is in fact true because of course they're not going to train the troops from a biblical perspective, but this is kind of like a parable, kind of in a way of if you were going to do the Bible, and but you were talking to people that would not pick up a Bible. It is an excellent way to prepare people for the end days, whatever you want to call these days that we're living now. And so I thought you might be interested in that.
It is interesting. Be very interested in hearing more about that later on privately for sure.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So I know that people have been following Skinwalker Ranch for a long time. As a matter of fact, I just watched a documentary. I think it was on Amazon Prime. I think um, before I saw yours, about I think it was like 2 seasons, and they did different projects like drilling a hole in a pit, and just the different paranormal phenomena that goes on there. So, how long have you been tracking the Skinwalker story, and any new insights?
I've been fascinated with the whole idea of the ranch for a very long time, and um, the it was a book done by George Knapp as well as goodness, I can't think of the other gentleman's name, but it's called The Hunt for the Skinwalker. And in that book, they talked about the family that previously owned the ranch for almost 60 years,
Mhm.
and that they sold it to a ranching couple by the name of not Bradshaw, but Sherman's, the Terry and his wife, Terry Sherman and his wife that bought the ranch, and they only owned it for about 18 months because quickly after they took over ownership of the ranch and brought their cattle onto the ranch, bizarre, weird things started happening, like these gigantic wolf creatures that would appear out of nowhere. And we're not talking like a normal sized wolf. We're talking something almost as big as a moose that would come out there and roam around their property. And they had some very hairy encounters with not just those kinds of entities, but even um, ones that were using cloaking technology, much like the movie Predator. There was a gentleman once, it finally came to light that there was a lot of paranormal stuff going on out there. Like one day, Terry and his wife were tagging baby calves, and they had just tagged this one baby calf and had gone maybe about 45 minutes walking off to the distance, and their dog kept carrying on. And like something really wrong, so the dog wouldn't relent or calm down, so they started walking back in the direction of the baby calf that they had just tagged. And as they got closer, they saw the mother limping with her leg, dragging one of her legs, and had some sort of injury to her leg, but the baby calf had been completely stripped of all meat. It was literally just the bones and a little bit of muscle tissue holding the bones together, and it was completely splayed out on the ground. And they were just, completely mortified, but at the same time they just couldn't believe what they were seeing because there was no blood on the ground whatsoever, no predatory marks of like chewing, biting, or anything like that, and that this could have occurred in that little amount of time and left no blood, nothing there. That it's just they couldn't. So immediately, they were on high alert of a lot of things that are going on. The Terry kept seeing windows opening in the sky at nighttime when he would be sitting outside, and it would be nighttime where he was at. But when this window would appear in the sky, it was daytime on the other side, and he would see craft flying out of that window or portal, whatever you want to call it, and he would also see him flying into it as well. And he just couldn't make heads or tails. But when this one gentleman had found out, he came out there to the property and asked if he could go out and meditate or pray on the property. So they took him down to Homestead too. And while he was sitting there in this yoga position with his hands out like this, and he was either meditating or praying or something, he kept hearing a cowbell. And he finally that triggered something. He was like, this is not normal. He's like, there's none of our cows have bells or none of our animals have bells on them. So he's like, what does that sound? And then he saw something breaking across the tree line and running between the trees. And he said, whatever it was, it looked like a heat mirage, pixelated. It didn't look normal. And finally, whatever it was broke from the tree line, ran straight up to the gentleman that was down on the ground praying or meditating, and it went right over him, and it just let out the loudest roar, scream, whatever you want to call it. But he said it was louder than a lion, a bear, and it made this guy jump from a sitting position about 6 feet backwards. And whenever they rushed over to check on him, this thing ran back off into the distance. But he said it was moving at incredible speeds. He said if he had to guesstimate how fast it was moving, he said probably anywhere between 25 to 30 miles per hour. And it was running, it was bipedal. But they were watching a movie on television, and on cable TV, and it was the movie Predator. And as soon as they saw the creature running around, that it was camouflaged, both him and his son both pointed at the screen. They're like, "That's it. That's what we saw. That was it." So there's all sorts of different things going on, and the TV show does not really touch on a lot of this stuff that's actually going on out there. If a lot of people really knew what was going on out there, I think they'd be a little more freaked out about the whole Skinwalker Ranch, and on top of that, that's only one location. It's like there's about 5 different ranches out there that all have the same thing going on out there. So you got Blind Frog, you got Moonshadow, you got Skinwalker Ranch, you got Stardust, and see Bradshaw, Stardust, Skinwalker, Moonshadow, and Blind Frog. So yeah, you got all 5 of those out there, all pretty much the same thing. But here's the one thing that a lot of people don't know is that when Robert Bigelow bought Skinwalker Ranch from the Shermans, he bought another ranch, one of those ranches as well. He bought Bradshaw Ranch, so he owned both Skinwalker and Bradshaw Ranch for almost a decade, and owned them both at the same time. And then when he got rid of Skinwalker Ranch, he also sold Bradshaw Ranch. And Travis Taylor, who's one of the people that you see on the Skinwalker show out there, at a private luncheon that he attended, where people pay to go sit and talk with him and eat lunch with him. There was an individual there that was recording this interaction, and Travis Taylor quite candidly said that the reason that Bigelow got rid of the ranch was he believed that it killed his wife.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the portals for a minute. I'm sorry to hear about the loss of his wife. So we were preparing at the government for Y2K. I can't remember if this is 2 years before Y2K or 1 year before Y2K. I think probably 1 year before. But I mean, I don't remember all the details because it was Friday afternoon. You know how Friday afternoons are, and all you want to do is, it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. All you want to do is go home and uh, go have your weekend, And so I did not think that I would be seeing anything spectacular. So, for whatever reason, there was a guy that came from Microsoft. He was very high up. And so, the whole purpose of Y2K was to get all computers to and sensors to talk with one another. So, I don't know how he did it. Like I said, I was kind of in the back. There was a crowd, all huddled around the computer. And somehow he would touch various points on the desktop, and it literally took you into different dimensions and portals. And you're like going, I mean, at that point, I'm just like, I'm just like, I don't really understand. Am I a tech guru? No. But that scared the heck out of me because he knew right where, like, if any one of us knew, or maybe he had a chip in his hand. I have no idea how, but he would go to certain places on the desktop, and it just, all of a sudden, portals and doors, it was portals opened, and it was truly terrifying. I learned to have a healthy respect, and it made me want to distance myself from just throwing myself at the internet. Like so many people, if they knew it could steal your soul and it could drag you through this technological portal, they might think twice about doing everything, that they do with all online and on the internet. It really did scare the heck out of me.
But
And I think that predator thing, so they're doing a lot with graphene, and graphene plays with the light. And so they are putting graphene into creatures, they're putting graphene into humans, and depending on the light, if they want it to go, you to be cloak, if they want Chad to be the invisible man, they just dose you with some nanoparticles of graphene, and the light will play, and you'll basically be invisible. And I would think that they've been playing with that technology both in their craft and also with the animals for some time now.
well, they've
So,
also the most recent UAP that they showed that looks some sort of like a drone, the one that they were referring to as jellyfish, that actually was flying over a U.S. military base when they were tracking that, and they said that while they were tracking it, it literally kept shifting in and out of visual the visual range. So it was literally cloaking itself at different times. And like I said, the only reason they know it was doing that was because of the FLIR technology that they were using to track it.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting once you get into the whole technology of that, which I've been writing about for some time now. So, in your research for making your film, how long did that research project take?
I spent about a year and a half assembling all the information together, coalesced into about 480 pages of notes, and then I took that and I crammed it down to about an 88-page script. So, needless to say, there was a lot of stuff that didn't quite make it in there. If I had truly made it exactly the way I wanted to, it would have been probably close to about 8 or 10 hours long. So, I had to settle for 2 hours and 34 minutes, and a lot of people that have watched it, they said that it's little, it's not very uncomfortable, but they were like, you got so much information jam packed in there that I had to go back and watch it about 4 or 5 times. There was just too much information in there, and I've had a
Yeah,
few people tell me it's almost academic level as well.
it is academic level. I can tell you that. And, something that I'm considering myself. So I'm just throwing it out there. I'm going to start doing, so my webinars are typically 2 to 3 hours and they're extremely dense. And people do the same thing. They have to look over it. But many people are losing the ability to sit for that long and to use their brains for that long. So I think what I'm going to do is do it in about 20-minute segments, do the same amount that I want. So you could have had your 10 hours, but break it up into 20-minute segments. And so the people would either pay for by the segment or for the whole entire series. And then you just roll them out like once a week or twice a week, whatever. And that way, and what I'm finding, I just went to these little snippets because a lot of times the stuff, technology that I'm talking about, and I'm talking to really intelligent people, and it just kind of goes over their heads. You get the deer in the headlights look, and it's kind of defeating the purpose. So I started to just recently do these 1 to 3 minute snippets on just a little fraction, a little something of the technology. And people are really engaging. They are loving it. So you give them a little bit of concept so that when you do a big presentation, they kind of have a foundation. You're not blindsiding them. So it might be something that you might want to try and play with. I've played with it with great success. I am getting a lot of engagement. People just say, I love this, the smaller, because, and then it makes them feel like it's not so threatening. It's not, I mean, it's dangerous or interesting, but it's not overwhelming that they come to despair or hopelessness or things like that. So I don't
And
know.
that was the whole thing about the film, is that I wanted to show and take people, from A to Z and show them that just how much all this stuff is completely connected, but at the same time that it's completely, entrenched in the demonic and satanic, and that, there is hope. And that's why towards the end of the film, I start getting into some of the scriptures, and we start showing Joe Jordan talking about how people were reaching out to him and asking, can you help me? Will this help me? Will it work for me like it did for them? And he said, absolutely. It's scientifically repeatable that, anyone who calls out in the name of Jesus, not only does it stop, but if they accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior, it stops permanently. It never picks up ever again.
Absolutely. So do you know who Dan Duvall is?
I know who Dan Duvall is. I know that he's worked with Justin in the past on the Fourth Watch Radio Network, so I'm familiar with him. I don't know him personally or anything.
Well, he wrote a book, Prayers That Shake Heaven and Earth. And when I was doing my synthetic biology webinar, I was really at like, what hope can I mean, it was packed full of scripture, but still it was a very stark and startling um, topic that we are literally being changed and they want us to be just shells that they can insert soft robotics, disembodied spirits, demons. And so Dan has put this book out called Prayers That Shake Heaven and Earth. And I tell you, he's got prayers for bloodlines and, in-laws, outlaws. We can't always like choose our blood because it is, but maybe there are some things in your blood that need to be cleansed. So he's got prayers for that. You can extricate the technology that they're throwing at us. Super great prayers on that. Some people say, well, I don't think it really all applies to me. You have to be careful in that way because you want to make sure that there's no demons hiding, if there's something that needs to be cleansed in your life. But also on the other side, um, it you can customize it. There's nothing to say that maybe the Holy Spirit has given you a particular add-on or take this out but put this one in that's more applicable in your situation. So things like tinnitus, all sorts of things that are dealing with paranormal. There's prayers about that. So it's a pretty good reference.
Yeah, and also the Bible tells us to pray and sanctify our food. The whole reason, I mean, did they know that 2,000 years ago they were going to be genetically modifying the food that we're going to be eating, starting all the way back in the early 90s? So, I mean, yeah, I totally believe that the power of prayer that can counteract a lot of this stuff that's being used against us. I mean, they've weaponized our food, our water supply, just about everything, even the air that we breathe, and that's also affecting the soil that everything grows in. So yeah, totally need to be aware of this, and you totally need to be mindful of it, and totally need to be praying over everything.
Yeah, but I don't think this is the first time. I think that during Genesis 6, this also happened. So I think we're just, and maybe even in the pre Adamic. I don't know if you believe in pre Adamic, but I believe in pre Adamic. So, I mean, this could have happened. I know for sure Genesis 6, but, there's megalithic structures, and those civilizations have all but vanished across the face of the earth. And yet they had tremendous technology and skills. When I was young, my dad worked for naval warfare, and we had a team of archaeologists. This was the late 50s, and I was sitting at their feet. I was young, and they were talking about taking out computers. I mean, in the 50s, computers that used to, in those days, it was whole rooms if people even knew what a computer was, batteries, lighting, advanced technology from ancient civilizations. And I think we were, as the kids, we were scooted out when it got to the classified information. But
Well,
I would,
the cell phone came out in 1947, as well as the transistor, and even what is it? Bob Lazar, who recently was on the Joe Rogan podcast, he said that out of the 9 craft that they had out there at S4 Area 51, he said one of those craft was actually recovered at an archaeological dig. He said he didn't know exactly when or where, but he said it was ancient. He goes, it wasn't just old; it was ancient. That was his words. So.
yeah, that doesn't surprise me because I was just sitting there riveted, and it actually inspired me to do archaeology. So I did archaeology in Israel and Qumran, and I loved it. I loved it. I wish I could do it again. I wish it was a safer world and things are not as intense as they are. It's not a really safe time to travel these days. Although there's some brave souls that do it. So, what do you think in this the Skinwalkers movie? What was the most shocking discovery that you made that kind of like rocked your world?
Well, one of the main areas of focus that I was looking into was the hitchhiker phenomenon, and that's a phenomenon when people go out to the ranch itself. It doesn't affect you personally if you go out to the ranch, but when you leave the ranch, and it's like a virus. It spreads like a virus through you, your family, your friends, loved ones, so on, and you never know exactly how it's going to spread. So, like, say if say me and you are related, that you live somewhere and we're just relation, but I go out there, well, it might not affect anybody directly towards me, but it could affect you because you're related to me, and there's no distance involved whatsoever. You never know exactly how far out it's going to reach. But like Axelrod, who was one of the characters in the book, he went out there for one day. He was out there for one day. He left, and it not only spread back to his family who lived clear across the United States, but it also spread through coworkers that he worked in the office with, and even some of their family friends, like his son's friends. It was affecting them as well. Um, the wife said that she saw an 8 foot tall cryptid in the backyard that looked like dog man, werewolf, whatever you want to call it, but it was 8 feet tall, standing backed up against a tree with its arms crossed like this, and it was just staring at her. And after a couple of minutes, it finally just put its hands down and it just walked off on 2 legs. And she didn't say anything because she wasn't sure if she just imagined that, you know, didn't want to freak her kids out or anything like that. But 2 days later, the kids just happened to be walking by the back door, and they saw the same creature standing out there staring at them. And of course, they're freaking out. And after a few minutes, it turned and took off running down the street on 2 feet, or 2 legs, I should say. So, I mean, just all sorts of things. The other friends of the 2 kids were seeing like orbs flying around in their bedrooms, shadow people in their houses, UFOs flying around outside, just all sorts of bizarre things. And that's the thing about the hitchhiker phenomenon. You never know what you're going to get. It could be multitude of things. And so looking into that people are experiencing this if they go out to Skinwalker Ranch and then bring it back to their families, or it attaches to them and it spreads out to their family and friends. Come to find out, the earliest case that I could find of a situation like this was actually Kenneth Arnold, who saw the 9 craft flying over Mount Rainier, Washington. In his book, he actually wrote that after he saw those 9 craft, and this is the guy that coined the term flying saucers. You know, when they asked him, they said, "What did you see?" He said, "It looked like saucers skipping upon a pond, and therefore we got the term flying saucers." So after he sees these 9 craft, he starts having poltergeist activity in the Arnold home. And even his daughter has gone on multiple interviews and said that the same thing, that there was all sorts of poltergeist activity taking place in their home after he saw these 9 craft. And it even gets even crazier because apparently Kenneth Arnold and Jack Parsons were flying buddies. That's another thing that a lot of people have never heard of or don't know much about. So that one kind of took me back when I found that out, and that they had a mutual friend that lived in Roswell named Robert Goddard, who was also an early pioneer in the rocketry technology and had also previously worked in the same area that Parsons and his suicide squad worked at Devil's Gate Dam. So that was another interesting little fact. But then I also found out another early pioneer of the hitchhiker phenomenon was Uri Geller. When he was introduced to the SRI, the back in the early remote viewing program, they had wanted to know more about how he was able to use psychokinetic powers to bend spoons and different things like that. Plus, he was also able to remote view, which they were just taken aback how many things this guy could do. And when the scientists were investigating him and trying to, monitor everything that things that were going on around him while he was doing his thing, they themselves encountered the hitchhiker phenomenon. They started seeing bizarre things in their homes, outside their homes, weird cryptids, shadow people, orbs, just all sorts of bizarre stuff. So, like I said, there's something that all this stuff is completely interconnected. It doesn't matter if it's remote viewing, if it's these geographical locations where the veil is thin and there's all this supernatural stuff going on, or even encountering UFOs themselves, like actual UFO encounters or even encounters with aliens themselves. So it's showing that these are all they're under the same umbrella. They're all attached, connected.
So, have you ever, in your research, did you ever look at advanced weaponry such as a mimetic mind virus?
I have not looked at that, but one of the things that Ray Boucher kept talking about was that they were using there was, I can't remember the exact name of it right now, but there was some sort of technology that they were using that was like mind. They referred to it as mind weapons, and I can't remember what the terminology was right off the top of my head. I'll have to look it up and tell you what it is.
So there's a book. He used to work for DARPA and CIA and, all your favorite characters, technological characters. And he wrote a book called Soul Catcher.
So
And he goes through the different um, technologies, and one of those is a mimetic mind virus. And that when they talk about the transmissibility of like the COVID with that construct,
mhm.
originally, I mean, I knew that there was a payload in it. I did not know. I gave out a bunch of like 10 different hypotheses of what the payload could be. I said it could be mix or match, could be any of them. Well, I just discovered, getting ready for my next webinar, that it is actually a computer virus code, a bad malicious code. And it can do many things that you're talking about. So I would really look that up, and that it is transmissible, and it doesn't, like you said, your brother could be living in Brazil and you have the experience, but it transmits to him and or people at work, and it's very real.
I think the name that I was trying to remember just now, I still haven't found it, but if I remember correctly, I think it was called psychotronic weapons.
Yeah, that it's basically in the psychotronic weaponry, but
Okay.
it definitely, it's a subset of psychotronic weapons. So I think you'll find the research very interesting. And if I were you, I'd get the book. You can get it on Amazon, um, probably other places too. It's well worth it because it gives most of the weaponry that the government is using clandestinely is has biblical names like Edom, Adam, just Christ, all sorts of all. And but we think that when they use the powers that be, say Christ or something, whatever word they're using, um, that it that it's the biblical, but it's not.
But I do know about the psychotronic weapons. It's that paperwork that Ray Boucher reached out and sent me, because he was in contact with Linda Moulton Howe, and they were the ones that were dealing. I know you probably heard the term Collins Elite. That wasn't the name that this group went by, but it's what a lot of people refer to them as the Collins Elite. They were actually referred to as the Riders, and these were people that worked within the Pentagon, and they said that they had witnessed that they were performing satanic rituals at not only military bases, but like a lot of these government agencies as well. And that not only were they successful, they were making contact with entities that were literally coming into this dimension, and they were getting something out of it. They were not only getting technology, but they were getting power, some sort of power that they were tapping into as well, and that really freaked them out. So, like I said, when they approached Ray Boucher, they approached him, one, because he worked for MUFON, but the other was because he was an actual pastor, and these two gentlemen were considered Christians. They believed that they believed that Jesus was their Lord and Savior, and so they were conflictive with what they were seeing and what they were being a party to, and that the U.S. government was willingly doing a lot of this stuff. So it shocked them.
Yeah, it doesn't shock me because so I've been doing what I've been doing, exposing some of the darkness in government and military for some time. And I was forensically documenting it and would do drop bills with various congressmen and legislators and that type of thing. But so a lot of people don't know that the precursor of the Mark of the Beast was introduced on Halloween 2005. It came from the United Nations to the federal government down to the states. And there was a vicious fight. There were core individuals in each state. We were fighting at both the state level and the federal level Unfortunately, as they would say at work, the train had left the station. So the agenda was going to move forward. It didn't matter. So it was defeated. Originally, the program was known as the National Animal Identification System. It had three pillars. All property, including your body, belongs to the government. Electronic identification of all biological life. That decision was made in 1975 at Asilomar, California, and 24/7 surveillance, which is what we're seeing now, quite frankly, unfold before our eyes. But they did that on Halloween. Then the B system in 2018 was also announced over Halloween. So they love to pick those dark days. And I'm aware because my dad was involved in some of the occultic um, communications and different things. If you want to go certain places, even where I worked, um, there's some dark things. There's dirt put on you. You're coerced into doing certain things that you would not ordinarily do, and so it is. The United States has this. I mean, we have a wonderful country, but we also have a dark side that has turned over and is in contact with entities and does engage in blood sacrifice to entities and demons. And now they want to bring it, they want to bring us all into the whole system. They're getting ready to do the end game.
Yeah, another interesting thing that I uncovered was the whole fact that the early remote viewing program was birthed by people who were OTs in Scientology. So that the techniques that they learned for remote viewing came out of Scientology, who just happened to be created by one of the understudies of Aleister Crowley, who worked side by side with Jack Parsons on the Babylon working ritual. So I found that very odd that the two main ones, Ingo Swann as well as Hal Puthoff, they were both OT7s, and their golden boy Pat Price, who also worked there at SRI, he was also an OT3. So again, you can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't make that up. So have you personally seen any creatures or UFOs or paranormal phenomena?
I would say that I've seen some paranormal things when I was younger, much younger, and that was the thing. Is growing up, my parents were a little more, I guess you would say, relaxed, lenient about as far as like things that I could watch, TV shows, movies of that nature. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of the stuff that I was into and watching was opening a lot of doorways that probably led to some of that.
Yeah, I was a science fiction buff, but I did it. My parents were very strict with screen time, not television screen time. They didn't have computer screen time back then, and but I was into science fiction. I love science fiction, and so I'm surprised, honestly, that I turned out. Thanks to Jesus Christ, I did not go to the dark side because most science fiction is very steeped in a lot of the demonic. As a matter of fact, my dad was friends with Gene Roddenberry, so we got to spend time with the original cast and see if it's the original Star Trek being filmed.
Well,
But it
that's
was,
interesting. That's
yeah,
very
they,
interesting because he was mixed up with the Council of Nine,
yeah.
the Nine. So yeah, when you start, that's the next film that I'm looking to get into. Is I'm going to break that wide open about Gene Roddenberry and the Nine.
Another thing, when you do that project, you might tie it in. Did you ever watch the TV show? It was 2 seasons, Revolution.
I believe I started watching a little bit. That's the one where they have technology that can make electronics work after the world has gone dark, or EMP or something
Yeah,
like that.
it went dark, but yeah, I would say, I mean, you kind of have to watch the first season to get the groundwork for the second season, but the really interesting stuff is in season 2. They talk about the fluorescent firefly nano particulates that go into people that turn them into zombies, and that's exactly what they're doing now. They use firefly in when GMO first came on the market. They were using jellyfish, but you can't synthesize it. They actually had to culture jellyfish and take and extract it and then put it into whatever they were going to into the genes of whatever they were mutating. Now with synthetic biology, they can synthesize the firefly, the stuff that makes them fire. So
That's that's interesting because there's a series called The Last of Us based on a video game that has to do with like fungus that turns people into zombies, and there's a group that is like the I guess you would consider the rebels, and they're called the Fireflies. So that's interesting.
yeah, I'd really watch the second season because so I just watched the last one because I don't know, I'm in this project and all the predictive programming, it's all there. Because the enemy has got to um, follow God's law, and the Lord always tells his prophets and his children what he's going to do. So the enemy is forced to do that. He has to play. Now he might deceive and twist and all that kind of stuff, but he does tell people what he's going to do, and he does that through predictive programming. So this second season, I mean, I saw the nano, I saw the fireflies, I saw reference to a hemorrhagic. I mean, this is just and zombies all in the last episode just before they cut it off. Oh, and by the way, it was the United Nations who made the script for Revolution. They literally told Hollywood this is what the script will be each week.
Well, it's the same thing in the movie Stargate. You look at that, and it was like the military and all the different government agencies had their hands all over that film, which went on to become one of the biggest TV series. And it's how many I don't know how many different franchises have spun off from Stargate. So, but yeah, they love discussing this stuff and putting it out there where we can see it, and it's also to a certain degree is so that way when we stand before the throne of judgment that they can honestly say, well, we showed them, we told them all this in advance. They were watching it in TV shows and movies, and that's the thing. It's like, yes, this is going to be used against you whether you realize it or not. So it's good to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah, you bought in. You bought the hamburger and fries and the drink.
Hmm.
If you don't turn it off and turn to something godly. I was gonna there was another show. Oh, this isn't a show, this is a book. Are you familiar with the Adam and Eve story?
That's the book that was classified right after it came
Yeah,
out. Yeah, and they
yeah.
only got 57 pages of it supposedly now that you can get your hands on to read. That's been declassified.
No, they're actually, if you go to the CIA reading room, that one's heavily redacted, but there are ones online about 113 pages. Plus, you can get 113 pages plus the prelude and the postlude. And there's a reason I'm bringing this up. So, my husband and I bought a place on top of a mountain in Montana on the leeward side of the Rockies, and we move up there, and there's a few cabins. It's not like a development or anything because you're on top of a mountain, but we found out that everybody was CIA. Of course, at that time that book was still classified, and we didn't have any idea why all the little cabins were CIA. But once that was released, of course, unfortunately that was after my husband was killed. uh the Now I know why, is because it's on the leeward side of the Rocky Mountains. So in the case of a pole shift, there's this big wall of water that starts in Asia, goes wipes out Washington, California, Oregon, um, Idaho. At Coeur d'Alene, it goes airborne. The wave goes airborne. It's about 1,000 feet high, and then it crashes down kind of where I am, unfortunately, in the Midwest, and wipes out continues on, wipes out the Midwest, wipes out the East, blah blah blah, and goes around the world. So really, the only safe place supposedly in that scenario, and there is evidence, archaeological and geologic like the dinosaurs over in the Green River. Is that Wyoming? I'm not sure if it's Wyoming or if it's Utah, where Dinosaur National Monument is. The bones are all jumbled and crumbled, and that's why, because there was this giant wall of water. Um, so it's kind of interesting. They do know things that they just don't want to tell us, but now they're really letting everything out at this point. They're not being bashful at all. They're just anything goes now, and they figure it's too late for anybody to really prepare spiritually or physically.
The good thing is we know that's not correct, and we know that our salvation lies in Jesus Christ, and all we have to do is turn to Him and accept Him as our Lord and Savior, and put all of our trust in Him, and be obedient and follow His word, and that we know that we don't have to worry about how this world ends, or how we go out in this world. It's all about the next life and the eternity being with Him. So.
Well, it's also comforting to know that there is going to be a remnant and that evil is, yes, it's given its time, but it is not the end of the story. And it's, Jesus comes back, he sits on the throne, and it depends what, 1,000 years of peace. And then I hope to get, I don't know, when do you think we get our glorified body? Before or after?
Well, I believe it's the ones that perish during the tribulation period will be the ones that reign during the millennial reign along with Christ. So the rest of us won't come onto the scene until after the 1,000-year millennial reign, after Satan's loose for a while, and then he's finally swept back into the lake of fire for forever. And then the rest of us will be judged, and then we will have our new bodies, and that we will be on new earth, new Zion, and be with the Lord forever after that.
I can hardly wait for that day. I don't know about you, but I mean, even though like your work is absolutely fascinating and riveting, and I love my work and the calling that the Lord has called me to do, but sometimes it is a war and I get tired, day in, day out, there's no days off in it. I mean, there really isn't.
Because a lot of people out there, they think, if you're walking close with the Lord, that it's going to be easy. It's going to be a cakewalk, and that's not the case. If anything that you should know and learn is that the closer you walk with the Lord, the stronger and the more massive the attacks are going to be, and they're going to come, and they're going to come quite frequently. And when you are truly being obedient to the Lord, that's when the attacks can be relentless at times. But that's the thing. It's like no matter how hard it might be, or depressed you might be, or whatever, you should just draw closer to the Lord and be like the apostles when they got beaten and thrown in prison. Whenever they got out, they were like, they were excited that they got to be persecuted for His namesake. They were they were ecstatic. They're like, yeah, this is awesome. So that's how we got to be, and just endure until He comes to claim us and take us home. And then after that, we probably won't even think about a lot of the stuff that we went through in this lifetime. We'll be too busy enjoying the next.
Absolutely. So in your film, I know we digressed for a minute, but that's kind of the fun of meandering through, and getting to know you and your work. So what was the biggest challenge in doing the film?
Uh, I would say a lot of the books that I was reading, because some of the material, especially the stuff about Kenneth Grant, when I was looking into a lot of that, the esoteric and occult stuff, I was familiar with some of the stuff that was in there, but not all of it. So there was a lot of different things that I had to do extra digging and look up a lot of stuff and try to wrap my head around what it was that they were exactly talking about. Because just because you read something and it sounds like it's meaning this, that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of hidden meanings in a lot of the different things, like the Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God book that I had to read, that Kenneth Grant wrote, who was the guy who took over Thelema and OTO after Crowley died. And he wrote this Typhonian series, and one of the books in there was the Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God book. And he talks about the sole purpose that NASA was created was to make contact with the other side, Well, when you look up the stuff about the Kelipode or the Clippeth and some of the things that they're talking about in there, as well as this Ashtakari, uh, uh, Ashtakari is a demonic realm that's referred to as the other side. And in fact, they talk about there was what was it, five kings of Edom that rule over this demonic realm. And the more I was looking into it, I was just like, holy cow, this is pretty mind blowing.
Well, that's what I thought when I watched Stranger Things. Like, I didn't know that Demogorgon was a real thing. I thought they just made up this word. And so one time I was doing, I don't know, an article or something, and I looked up Demogorgon, and there it was. It was some demonic creature. I can't remember now because who wants to remember the demonic when you can look at the glory of Jesus Christ? So I don't, it went in at one side. It was there long enough to do the research and then out. And then also the upside down world. And isn't that where we're living right now? The upside down world where good is evil and evil is good. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty insane, and that a lot of the stuff that you see in that TV show, you think that this is all made up, but it's like completely based on reality. And they were tapping into other dimensions. They even what was it, the chair that they used at the facility in Camp Hero that they referred to as the Montauk chair, where individuals would sit in it, and they said that they could think about certain things and things would appear from another dimension into this reality, and vice versa. Sometimes they would bring creatures into this reality. And at the last time that they were using the Montauk chair, there was a child by the name of Duncan who was sitting in it, and they walked up and whispered something into his ear, and then all of a sudden he thought of some creature, it appeared, and this thing, depending on who saw it, everybody said they saw something different. Some people said it was 9 feet tall, others said it was 30 feet tall, and they said it was completely hairy, almost looked like a Bigfoot, and that it was just going around destroying everything in sight, and possibly even killed a few people on the base. So, like I said, can't make this stuff up.
So do you know if the Montauk is um, related to the Montauk monster of Plum Island?
I don't know if it's necessarily because I know what you're talking about, 3 Mile Island with the research facility out there where supposedly the
Mhm.
Lyme disease and a bunch of other
Yes.
stuff came from.
Yeah.
But again, if that's the case, if that is the case, what you're talking about, were they bringing things in from other realities, other dimensions into our reality and keeping them locked up, kind of like the what is it, the island of Doctor? I can't think of the name of it. Where
Moreau.
Dr.
Moreau.
Moreau, yeah, Dr.
Yeah.
Moreau. So is it something like that where all these creatures are literally locked up out there from another dimension on this prison on a 3 Mile Island? I don't know.
Well, now the island is no more. It's now in the Manhattan, Kansas, in the heart of America, in the heart of cattle and agriculture. And they've got the most lethal weapons, and they have an insectary where they're weaponizing bugs against us. I mean, it's crazy. And this
Well,
one, unlike Plum Island, I could go and I could look at the research they were doing. I even had film footage that I had of college students cavorting around, and they were supposed to go into quarantine afterwards and they didn't. I did some marvelous exposés on Plum Island, but this new facility, you can get the plans, and as far as very little comes out of that facility because it's all classified what they're doing inside.
and it's a level 4 biolab that just happens
Yep.
to be sitting right in the middle of Tornado Alley. So, what could
Yeah.
go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong? What could go wrong?
Nothing.
So
Nothing.
you've got Ghostbusters on your shirt. And so have you ever seen a ghost?
I don't think I've ever seen a ghost, but we know who the original Ghostbuster is. And in fact, the demons always trembled whenever they got near Jesus. And you remember when Legion encountered him, they said, if you come to a torch rest before the appointed time, and he always told them, be silent. He didn't want testimony coming from unclean spirits to who he was. So it's just something from my childhood, but also it's a good conversation starter to lead straight into the gospel. So I use everything. It doesn't matter if it's ancient aliens or whatever. It's like I can quickly steer it into the Bible real quick.
And that's good. That's the way that it should be. And so, what is the most succinct revelation that you got from the Lord in your project? Just-
Mainly, I just wanted to show that yes, there is a lot of darkness in this world. Um, and that's why at the towards the end of the film you see where I show how everything jumped off around the year 1947, and I show how all the UFO activity just literally went completely through the roof. And it wasn't just the United States, it was also Europe as well as Australia. And you have to ask yourself, why are these locations, why are they such hot spots? Why do they light up like a Christmas tree? And it all boils down to that a lot of the people that live in these areas or these geographical locations are completely mixed up in the occult and esoteric. Like I didn't even realize until I had to start doing some of the research on the Kenneth Grant books. You can't even buy them in the United States. You have to order them from England. And so, again, and knowing people in Australia as well, that a lot of the people over there had immigrated back in the early 1900s over to from Europe all the way out to Australia. So again, they took a lot of these beliefs and things that they were mixed up in and carried it off to there as well. So I think that's why you see such prevalent UFO activity and encounters, and how all this stuff just kind of cherry picks right off of a lot of the things that people are mixed up in, and that they are habitually opening doorways.
yeah, there's a lot of witchcraft. There's a lot of wonderful Christian people in Australia, but there's a lot of witchcraft over there as well. It's kind of like a hot spot for witchcraft.
And it's not just the people that live there. Again, keep in mind, I'm saying that a lot of this stuff has to do with the governments of these places, what they are involved in, what they are invoking, and what they are doing. Even the FBI document 6751 that was declassified back in 1948. They knew all the way back then that these supposed UFOs were interdimensional. And they even use esoteric and occult terms like the Talas and the Lokas. And they even said, those who are familiar with occult and esoteric terms will understand what we're talking about here. And when you look in the Talas and Lokas, what is that? Well, it has to do with interdimensional or even demonically or heavenly realms. So
That's very interesting because so in the 1990s, I was on a couple of forums, and one of them is called One Health, and it was for what would become known later as precision medicine. And I just opened a thing on a seminar that or a webinar that they're going to be giving. I don't know when it is, pretty soon, because I just opened it, and it is talking about not interdimensional, interpandemic. So we're in this interpandemic time. So like it's almost like an idol that we're worshiping the pandemic. That if we feed the the pandemic gods, that we'll be okay. I mean, these people are absolutely insane. They're the ones that really want to depopulate the earth. But I had never heard that inter-pandemic period before. And, that was my expertise and I follow One Health and also working with FEMA. So I had just never heard that term, but now I think it needs to be on our radar that they really do have this plan. It's like interglacial in between the glaciers, but there's certain actions that we're supposed to take, like we're all supposed to get this go under the World Health Organization and under the United Nations. How about just calling on the name of the Creator God, Jesus Christ, and Abba Father in heaven, and say, please protect me from, whatever, or please heal me if I do get sick, God forbid. And so, but they want us to call on different gods.
Well, a lot of them, they would rather worship the creation rather than the creator,
Yes.
and they're quite content with that. And then you got a lot of people out there that claim to be Christians. They say that they worship Jesus, but they're worshiping another Jesus. So it's even like the series The Chosen that a lot of people get so swept up into, and they just completely adamant about, this is an incredible series, it's doing so much work for the kingdom. It's like, but it's not biblical. And they've even in their own mouths have come out and said that 90% of it doesn't even come from the Bible. Well, I have a big problem with that. And I'm not going to promote, nor am I going to endorse or stand behind anything that is not completely 100% coming from Scripture. I'm sorry, but 10% is just not enough for me. I want 100.
Yeah, I stand with you. I've been a critic of the Chosen, because some of the words are coming straight out of the Book of Mormon. It's filmed on a Mormon set.
It's a Mormon
The
company. It's a
Yeah,
Mormon company.
it's a Mormon company, so you're giving money to the Mormon. And Mormons are not Christians. They are
Well,
not Christians.
you also have the Catholics and the Templars involved as well, and that's another
Yes.
thing. If you don't know much about the Catholic Church as well as the Templars, especially, or even the Jesuits, Rosicrucians, any of this kind of stuff, it's like you need to seriously start cracking some books and reading a little bit, because what you will read, you're not going to like, and you're not going to want to have any part of it.
Yeah, this one guy did this I think it was like 4 hour video, and he did an excellent job. I don't have time to watch anything for 4 hours, but I wanted to do my homework. And that's one thing I will do is dig in. And so it was a video, which is different for me than a book, but he would get how he got the footage. I don't know, but he was on Zoom meetings with the actor that plays Jesus with like skulls on his thing. And he is a large promoter of the gay and lesbian agenda, and they're meeting with the Pope and getting the Pope's like blessing for the Chosen. And I'm just like, no, that is not that. What they're doing is branding Jesus and saying it's the authentic Jesus, but that's not who Jesus is. They're putting Jesus in a box. They're glamorizing Jesus for marketing purposes, and that is not good in my book.
Yeah, Good Vibe Ministries has got about a 30-minute long documentary where they have all this footage that you're talking about. You can actually hear it coming from their mouths, where they say 90% of this is not even coming out of the Bible. And the guy that plays Jesus talking about the Templars, like they're this great organization, like Masonic Freemasons and so on, and talking about praying to dead saints and Mary and all that. And it's like, uh-uh.
So, what's your next project going to be?
I'm thinking the next project is going to be on the nine. I want to do a deep dive on Pirovich and Edgewood Arsenal, as well as this group of wealthy, elite Americans who were mixed up in all this, and that they ended up being part of the Knights of the Round Table group, as well as Lab 9, but that they were all working. Doing seances and mediums, dealing with this group that refer to themselves as the Council of Nine. And even Aleister Crowley has made the statement, I serve my God Lucifer and his Augustus Council of Nine. So that right there should tell you who the Nine actually is, the Council of Nine, and that there's been nine gods or nine ruling gods over every pantheon, every civilization all throughout history, whether it be the nine gods over Egypt, the nine gods that ruled over Olympus, and so on. I mean, you just see it over and over and over. And like I said, when you truly break it down and understand that these are all the same nine gods and that Lucifer is the head of it, it just makes you wonder, how far has this facade really been going on? And does this actually go all the way back to the garden, which of course we know that it does.
Yeah, it does. I think it might have been slower in the beginning. Um, so I got a question for you since we're kind of talking about different things. So when Cain slew Abel, and of course he had the mark put or the seal put on his head because he was scared that the people out there were going to kill him. Who do you think those people were? Because if humanity or mankind was in the all in the garden, who were the people out there that would have killed him?
Well, this one of these this whenever people pose that to me, I ask, how deep do you want to get into this? Do you want to talk about the pre-Adamic, or what they call gap theory? Do you want to talk about six day generation, and pre-Adamite, or how deep do you want to go? Because we can get pretty deep. And anybody who's done just a little bit of research into the gap theory, or pre-Adamite, or pre-Adamic, whatever you want to call it, and Genesis 1:1, 1:2, the tohu bohu. I mean, right then and there that
Yeah.
the translation is not correct, that there was a flood before the flood of Noah. Why was there a flood before the flood of Noah? And what was he trying to get under control? And on top of that, you got the whole thing about 6 day generation, because you got two creation accounts in Genesis where it talks about God created men and women and told them to be fruitful and multiply. But then he turns around and he says, well, then God created Adam. Adam was unique. He put Adam in the garden. So it's like, okay, well, what about this other group of men and women that he had already created? Now we're over here on Adam and talking about this garden. So again, it's all about context. And like I said, if you take all these things into context, that there was pre-Adamic generation as well as the 6 day generation, I don't think it's too far a stretch to figure out who it was that he was fearful of, and that he felt that if they encountered him, that they would hurt him or possibly even kill him, and that is why God marked him, so that when they saw him, they would not want anything to do with him. They would not want to incur the wrath of God.
Yeah, I think that they were just my take is that they were humanoids, but maybe did not have a soul like we do. So I don't know, you know.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, and it's not like this is not a salvational issue getting into topics like this. This is just being like the Bereans, and wanting to rightly divide the word and to dig deeper. And there's nothing wrong with searching a matter out, because I mean, we should be able to talk about anything in the Bible. Anybody, any pastor or anybody within a church that tells you we don't need to talk about this kind of stuff, it's not important, you need to run. That's a church you don't want any part of, because if we can't discuss the word, that's not a church. That's a cult.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got to put it in context because if
Exactly.
you don't put it in context, anybody can take a word out or a sentence out of the scripture and build a whole cult on it. But so we have to have it in context. It has to fit together. It really is put together like a brick, layer upon layer, um, brick upon brick as it's built. So precept upon precept. So, well, tell people about some of your other work. So when they go to VMO and check it out, and are we going to encourage people? Let's see, are we going to have the trailer? Are we going to attach the trailer to this interview?
Yeah, we can attach a trailer to this. I know that you work with Karsten, so he's a friend of mine, and yeah, he's got the trailer. He can put that in there quite easily, and the you can find the film. He'll also, I'm sure, put a link to the film in there as well.
Yes.
But if you don't, let's just say somebody ripped the audio from this and they put it up on their own channel, and they're just listening to this. You can go to Google and you can type in Vimeo, VIEO, and it's Skinwalkers and Stranger Things of the Unseen Realm. And also, if you're on YouTube, you can also look that up as well and find my channel. It's called True Seekers Research. And eventually, I do plan on doing like a Patreon type thing where I'll probably be putting up a video every week or every other week for those who want to support our ministry and to get the word out. And they will get exclusive videos that nobody else will have access to. So it's coming. I'm working on it.
Okay, so what are your other films so that if people are interested in your work?
Yeah, the previous films that I did, I worked with two guys by the name of the Justin Westfall, the Fall Brothers, as people know them as. We worked. I was executive producer, which means I financed the film Hollow Earth Chronicles, Episode One, The Dark Chambers, and I was also executive producer of Higher Entities, The Lost Tapes. And then I also did media consultant work on Belly of the Beast when they were working at Skywatch TV, working for Defender Films alongside Tom Horn and all them. So I've done quite a few films already. This is my fourth film, my solo film. So I'm hoping that it blesses a lot of people, and I'm hoping it opens a lot of people's eyes and leads them to the Lord more than anything.
Well, it certainly was fascinating. And thank you so much for listening to the Holy Spirit and doing the film and doing such a intense job. Some people would have just glossed over it, but you just took it by the bull by the horn, so to speak, and did excellent research and great, old footage. And that's not easy to get a hold of all the time these days. So you did a great job in putting it together. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and it was an honor to be here with you today.
Well, it was an honor to have you. So this is Celeste with the Celestial Report, and we will see you the next time. Thank you.